Hello, everyone. Tonight we are crouched under the broad, fern-fringed belly of a world older than myth, older than bones, older than fear itself. Overhead, the clouds boil with a kind of slow, ancient rage, and if you tilt your head just right, you can almost taste the static on your tongue before the first droplet dares to fall. And fall it does. The first fat raindrop hits your snout with an audible plop. You blink, then another, and another. Within seconds, it's a chorus, a gentle pattering across leaves wider than dining tables, scales smoother than river stones, and the enormous dome of your head. You're young, a juvenile sauropod, maybe 9 meters from snout to tail, but it's your first storm. And that matters. The herd moves and you follow, but slowly. You're not sure whether to be scared or fascinated. Everyone else seems calm. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Post your location and the time you're listening in the comments. I want to know what kind of skies you've got. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You shuffle forward, your feet sinking slightly into the quickly softening earth. Around you, the ferns bend, waterlogged and graceful. Farther off, a ceratopsian lets out a short, annoyed grunt and ducks beneath a cycad's canopy. Even predators, yes, even that smug-looking megaraptor lurking on the ridgeline seem to pause. It's not that the rain scares them, it's that it commands respect. Lightning forks through the air like the claws of the sky itself. You stop walking, neck-stretching instinctively toward the source of the light. The sound follows, delayed yet deep enough to vibrate through your chest. You almost forget you're cold, soaked, and not entirely sure where your herd went. You find them moments later. The adults have huddled into a loose spiral flanks, outtails curled protectively toward the inside. You wedge yourself beneath the ridge of one of the matriarchs, her skin warm and steaming, even under the assault of the downpour. Her only acknowledgement is a soft snort through nostrils the size of your whole face. You are safe. For now. Somewhere to the east, a flash illuminates the ridge of a now submerged nesting ground. A mound collapses into a slurry of mud and eggshell fragments. You shiver not just from the chill, but from the knowing. The storm isn't just an inconvenience. It's a force that rewrites the rules. Historians still debate whether dinosaurs had specific responses to weather or if their behaviors were purely instinctual. You're inclined to think it's a bit of both. Because right now instinct says huddle, but curiosity still pulls at your feet. You step away, just a few meters, just to feel the rain directly. Your eyes flutter closed as rivulets slide down your hide. You can smell everything. The rich, wormy loam, the acidic tang of crushed foliage, and the sudden, oily scent that always comes before lightning strikes close. No wonder modern humans call it petrichor. Even you feel ancient just standing in it. The raindrops hit the pond like tiny meteors, each leaving a crater and a ring. You lean down to drink, but flinch as a frog-like creature leaps from the water's edge. It's the size of your head and makes a sound like a rubber boot squeaking against wet tile. You would laugh if your kind laughed. A passing pack of dromaeosaurs slows to observe you. Their feathers are soaked flat against their skin, making them look oddly defeated like soggy house cats. One of them sneezes. The leader lets out a low chirp that might mean pathetic. You hold your ground even though your legs are shaking. You're not food. Not yet. And they move on. The storm intensifies. Sheets of water now fall with such force that the trees sway not with the wind, but with the weight of it all. You try to walk again, but the ground slips beneath you. You crash sideways into a patch of wet moss, sending up a splash that smells of decay and something oddly sweet, maybe the crushed body of a giant flower. Or something less innocent. Suddenly, the matriarch calls out a low rolling boom from deep within her chest. It reverberates through your gut like a temple bell. You scramble upright and dash back toward the safety of her side. This time you don't stray. Above you, clouds shift with sluggish menace. The thunder sounds more bored than angry now, but you know better than to think that means the worst is over. The land has been waiting for this water. Some of it rejoices, some of it breaks. Here's an odd little fact: there's fossilized evidence of rain imprints. Actual raindrop craters left in ancient mud preserved for millions of years. You wouldn't think such fleeting things could last, but they do, just like memories or fear. The matriarch shifts and you instinctively mirror her. There's no planning here, only rhythm. The herd sleeps standing. You try. Your eyelids flutter. Raindrops tick against your back in a slow, hypnotic rhythm. It's not lullaby rain. It's the kind that tests you, makes you earn your rest. And yet you do sleep for a while, until the thunder cracks again, and this time it feels personal. By morning, the storm has moved on, dragging its bruised belly across the sky and leaving a wet hush behind. You don't remember falling asleep, but you do remember waking up to the sound of drips, thousands of them plinking from every leaf, branch, and scale. The air feels heavier but cleaner too, like something has been wiped off the surface of the world. You stretch. Your joints creak in that satisfying, awkward way only a half-grown sauropods can. Mud clings to your legs in long, peeling ribbons, and a puddle nearby holds your smeared reflection distorted, sleepy-eyed, and vaguely judgmental. You blow a snort through your nostrils, clearing them with a wet, trumpet-like honk that startles a small pterosaur into dropping its breakfast fish. Around you, the landscape has changed. You wouldn't think a single night could rearrange the world, but somehow it has. What was hard-packed trail yesterday is now a sponge. What were gentle slopes are now slick sliding traps, and most curiously of all, the ground is a storybook, a muddy, messy living record of everything that passed through here in the storm's wake. Tracks, some fresh, some already softening at the edges. You walk among them like a detective at a crime scene, your tail swaying slowly behind you. There's a cluster of three-toed prints pointing north, probably left by a group of troodontids too small to fear, too clever to ignore. Farther along, you spot a single wide imprint pressed deep into the slop, a hadrosaur's rear foot, judging by the rounded shape and the way the toes splay like a lazy starfish. And there near the reeds, those aren't footprints at all. They're drag marks. Something crawled or limped or maybe slithered through while the rain pounded down. You follow the trail, heart suddenly thrumming. Whatever it was, it moved with purpose. A straight line, no loops, no hesitation. Predators don't meander. You know this now. The trail ends at a hollow tree split open like a peeled banana. Inside, it's empty. Just the smell of rot and an odd cluster of broken eggshells, too soft for reptiles, too large for insects. You back away slowly. Some mysteries are best left half-solved, especially before breakfast. Speaking of which, your stomach growls. A nearby fern patch glistens with rain. You lean down to tear at the leaves, savoring the bitter taste laced with grit. Not your favorite, but it'll do. You chew slowly as the sun finally breaks through, casting shafts of golden light through the mist like spotlights, searching for lost souls. And that smell, oh, that smell, petrichor. It's still here, stronger now that the rain has stopped. If you were a human, you would probably describe it as a mix of wet stone, fresh soil, and nostalgia for things you've never lived. But and sureness, not human. You're a creature of instinct, and to you the smell means safety. It means the fire in the sky is gone, and the earth is awake again. Historians still debate whether dinosaurs had specialized olfactory behaviors after storms, using scents to locate others or to avoid threats. But you know what your nose tells you: move now. The herd is stirring. You slosh forward, feet heavy in the mud, toward the others. As you pass the edge of a shallow ridge, your foot lands in a deep pool, unexpected, cold, and hilariously smelly. You lurch sideways, slip, and land with an echoing squelch that sends a cloud of frogs skittering. One of them jumps squarely onto your snout and just sits there. You blink unamused. The frog blinks back perfectly unbothered. The matriarch watches from a distance. You're almost certain she's smirking. As you shake the frog off and get back up, something glints in the muck, a tiny spiral-shaped shell half buried near the water's edge. You nudge it with your snout. It's light, fragile, and impossibly old. Not even your kind understands where all the little things come from. You tuck it away under a fold of vine for later. Maybe it's lucky, or maybe it'll be forgotten before nightfall. Either way, it has survived the storm, and that counts for something. A few meters away, a small stegosaur is testing the mud with delicate, dance-like steps. She raises her feet high before placing them down as if the whole world were a soggy tightrope. Her plates are gleaming with droplets that catch the sunlight like sequins. She sees you watching and huffs, offended by your intrusion. You pretend not to notice and wander toward a fallen log instead. Here's an odd fact: there are fungi that only sprout after ancient-style rains. Large, bulbous things that push through soil like thoughts breaking into dreams. Some of them glow faintly. You find a patch now nestled against the log. Bioluminescent threads twitching softly in the morning shade. Are they food? Are they warning? Are they both? Doesn't matter. They're beautiful. The rest of the morning is quiet but not silent. The forest hums with recovery. Birds? Yes, real birds flit from tree to tree, shaking themselves dry with ruffled indignation. Some still look halfway like dinosaurs, all teeth and attitude and half-evolved songs. You pause beneath one as it belts out a long, piercing note followed by a short series of chirps that sound like a xylophone argument. You mimic the rhythm, stomping your foot twice and letting out a low grunt. The bird flaps away. You win. There's a comfort in this post-rain calm. A sense that the worst is over, that things are growing again. But there's also something lurking in the edges of your mind, like the smell of thunder on a day that's too sunny, or the memory of lightning when skies are blue. Rain never really leaves. It just waits its turn. You're standing in ankle-deep mud, staring at the edge of what used to be a gentle creek. Now it's a roaring brown serpent, wide and writhing, chewing through the forest floor like it's hungry for roots and memories. This wasn't here yesterday. The storm last night didn't just leave puddles and pretty reflections, it left a problem. The ground shudders beneath your feet as another chunk of earth collapses into the current, dragging a broken log and a very confused, very wet coelurosaur with it. He scrambles free, eyes wild, then bolts into the trees, probably to go reevaluate all of his life decisions. Honestly, you can relate. Flash floods were part of life in the Mesozoic, especially in regions where seasonal rains hit like freight trains. The land was unarmored, no deep roots, no safe basins, and water didn't ask permission to rearrange things. You need to move. The problem is you don't know where. Your herd is gone again. Or rather, it's ahead. Across the flood. You can see them on the far slope, silhouettes outlined against a sky that's trying its best to look innocent again. Blue, and full of those lazy clouds that pretend they had nothing to do with last night's drama. You take a step toward the water, but instinct yanks you back. One more step and you'd be in the current, swept downstream like a soggy pine cone. You need another route. There's a narrow stretch of higher ground following the water's edge. It looks stable, mostly, maybe. You turn and begin your careful shuffle, each foot testing before the next follows. It's a slow process, but you're built for slow. Long strides. Low center of gravity. Ridiculous tail that acts like a balancing pole and also occasionally knocks over smaller trees. You're like a polite wrecking ball with anxiety. Up ahead, the ground levels out again. You breathe, and then you hear it, a rush, a rumble, a crack. Something upstream just gave way. The flood comes like a summoned beast rounding the bend with foam in its teeth. It's faster than you'd expect for something so thick. And it's coming for you. You do not consider, you run. Mud sprays behind you as your legs churn, muscles stretching farther than they want to. You can hear debris clattering in the wavestone's branches, the carcass of something that didn't run fast enough. Your heart hammers in your chest. The path rises slightly ahead, just a few more steps. Then your foot catches. Your front leg slides into a hole hidden under the mud and you go down hard. You skid, shoulder-scraping bark and rock. Pain flashes like lightning behind your eyes. The flood is nearly on top of you. And then, just as your head fills with that strange clarity that always comes before a very bad ending, something blocks the light. It's her, the matriarch. Again, she stands over you, tail lashed to one side, front leg planted firm. The current crashes around her legs, tugging at her weight, but she doesn't budge. She lowers her massive head and nudges you. Not gently, more like a bulldozer that's slightly fond of you. You scramble to your feet, blood rushing, and together you move. She doesn't guide you, she drives you forward, keeping pace, her bulk shielding you from the worst of the water. The two of you crest the rise and finally collapse on the other side, soaked, shaking, but alive. You both sit there for a while just breathing. Historians still debate whether sauropods displayed active parental care or merely tolerated their young. But let's just say this tolerance doesn't usually involve body blocking a river for a juvenile idiot who fell in a hole. Once the shaking stops, you look around. The flood is already beginning to recede, leaving behind puddles full of silt and shredded plant matter. Insects buzz to life again. A few ornithopods pick their way across the broken terrain, sniffing at overturned logs and flattened nests. And they're half buried in the muck. You see something that makes you stop. It's a skull, not fossilized, fresh, not long dead, just empty. It belonged to a juvenile like you by the look of it, but this one didn't make it through the flood. You stare, and for once your mind goes quiet. You don't feel sad exactly. You feel aware of how lucky you were, of how thin the line is between I tripped and fell and I don't get a next breath. Here's an odd fact. Some paleontologists believe the most common cause of death in the fossil record isn't age or violence, it's accidents. Floods, collapses, freak events. Nature doesn't need to hate you. It just needs to be in a bad mood. You turn away and rejoin the herd. The matriarch doesn't look at you. She doesn't need to. You're here. That's enough. Later, as the sun dries your skin and the insects resume their eternal war with the world, you lie down beside her and try to rest. Your dreams are strange. You're swimming through air chased by shadows shaped like rivers. You cry out once in your sleep. When you wake, everything is still. Rain can carve rivers, reshape hills, and wash away whole generations. But it also reveals who will stand when the water comes. The sky hasn't decided what it wants to be yet. You squint upward. Half the dome is clear blue, lazy and warm, while the other half simmers with low gray bellies stretched and grumbling, like they skipped breakfast. You've lived through one storm already, and you're not eager for a sequel. But the matriarch is moving, and when she moves, everyone follows. You plod along with the herd as it stretches into a ragged line across the flood-repaired plain. There's something deliberate in the pace today. Not a panic, not exactly urgency either. Just that subtle push of a species that knows how to listen to the sky even when it hasn't spoken yet. The ground squishes underfoot. Every step leaves a soft memory. You're migrating. Dinosaurs didn't migrate like birds do today. No? Neat V formations, no seasonal passport stamps, but many of them followed ancient paths in search of food mates or better weather, especially in places where rain came in fierce, rhythmic cycles like the monsoons that once ruled this region. The herd heads west. You don't ask why. No one does. You're just aware that there's a dry place waiting on the other side of this sodden patchwork. A ridge, a grove, somewhere that smells like tomorrow. But it's not just your kind on the move. To your left, a mixed group of ornithopods winds through the reeds, their duck-billed heads bobbing rhythmically. They honk to one another, short bursts of communication that sound like a tuba losing an argument. One of them looks over at you and blinks in that special way that says, "Don't even think about sharing this mud puddle." You don't. You've learned your lesson. To your right, a small pack of raptors is mirroring your pace at a distance. Not hunting, not running, just keeping rhythm, like predators who know they'll eat eventually. No rush, no need to show teeth. And above gliders, tiny ones. You've seen them before, but never this many. Little feathered things with sails stretched between elongated fingers, drifting on the warm gusts stirred by the growing humidity. They chirp, they dive, they look like living kites. Some will end up in a belly before day's end. That's just the price of showboating. Here's an odd little truth. There's a prehistoric species of flying reptile with a crest taller than its body. It served no aerodynamic purpose, it just looked cool. Evolution. It turns out has a sense of humor, or vanity, or both. Back below, the land slowly changes. The soaked forest gives way to open flats pocked with standing pools and carpets of new growth. Rain makes things rise. What was dust 2 days ago is now green fuzz pushing up between roots and rocks. Small creatures are everywhere, scuttling, hopping, darting under leaves. The world feels like it just rebooted. Historians still debate whether dinosaurs timed their migrations with mathematical precision or simply followed environmental cues. But you can feel it. The way the wind curves around your neck, the tension in the soil, the weight of the air before the next curtain of water comes down. There's a tempo to this journey even if no one's holding a metronome. The matriarch stops briefly at a high ridge where the land breaks into soft, crumbling steps. You follow her gaze. Ahead, stretching for kilometers, is the basin, low and green, scattered with distant herds. A thunderhead looms far beyond building in the distance. Not close yet, but coming. You continue on, passing smaller herds that have clustered around temporary watering holes. There's always a tension here. Some groups mingle, others eye each other warily. Everyone's watching for sudden movement, a wrong honk, a lunge, a challenge. You pass an old triceratops alone and half buried in mud. He's still breathing but slow. His horns are chipped. His frill is cracked like old pottery. You stop briefly. He doesn't even lift his head, just exhales a sound like a deflating tent. The matriarch walks past without pause. You catch up. You know what happens to stragglers. By mid-afternoon, the sun has returned blazing and theatrical, as if to apologize for yesterday's tantrum. You're sweating, but so is everyone else. Steam rises from the ground in delicate curls. The humidity is thick enough to chew. That's when the insects return. First a few, then a buzzing haze. You try to ignore them, swatting your tail lazily, but some are bold. You snort one out of your nostril and nearly trip over a startled protoceratops. She snaps at you. You grunt. The tension passes, barely. And then the gift of all this misery, a shallow stream. Clear, cold, reflecting the sun like it's showing off. The entire herd slows. One by one, each dinosaur lowers its head to drink. You wade into the shallows, letting the water lap against your knees. It feels incredible. You drink until your sides are full and your mind feels like it's stopped vibrating. Nearby, younger juveniles splash each other, their squealing trumpets filling the air. One of them slips and falls face first into the mud. The others scatter laughing, or whatever passes for laughter in your kind. It's hard to tell, but there's something joyful in their chaos. You close your eyes, listening. The wind, the water, the soft murmur of a world in motion. Rain will come again. You can smell it already. But for now, the herd rests. And the land, reborn in green and steam, lets you breathe. The rain comes back in the late afternoon. Not in angry sheets, but as a whispering mist sneaking down from the canopy and ghosting across your back like a warning you pretend not to hear. You blink slowly, watching the droplets gather on the ends of your eyelashes before slipping off like lazy stars. The herd doesn't scatter this time. No one bolts, no one bellows. Instead, something remarkable happens. You and a dozen others, mostly juveniles, find yourselves naturally drifting toward the shadow of a single massive shape. The matriarch again, of course, but she's not alone this time. There are other giants nearby, older, slower, but still steady. You stop beneath one of them, close enough to hear the slow, wet breathing that fills the air like waves against a shore. Rain hits them first, not you, not yet. Their bodies become roofs, walls, and windbreaks. You're sheltered without being smothered. The only sound is the soft ch-ch-ch of water rolling down scale and ridge, dripping from tail tips and elbow creases, collecting in the folds of ancient flesh. Historians still debate whether dinosaurs engaged in deliberate communal protection during storms, or whether this was incidental, just a matter of size and luck. But standing here beneath a breathing fortress, it doesn't feel accidental. It feels like ritual. A young nodosaur beside you chirps softly, testing the volume of its own voice in the muffled air. You answer with a quiet grunt. Not words, but not meaningless either. There's a strange comfort in sharing small sounds when the world goes quiet. Nearby, a hadrosaur lowers itself to the ground, flopped on its side like a beached canoe. It exhales sharply and flaps its tail against the ground, once splashing mud across a pair of bickering pachycephalosaurs who respond by headbutting each other half-heartedly. You watch this happen and chuckle inside your skull. Prehistoric comedy, silent, physical, always a little bit muddy. Above you, the canopy is alive, not just with water, but with motion. Small creatures stir in the wet leaves, chirping, clicking, whispering through branches like old gossip. You glance up and lock eyes with something that looks like a squirrel crossed with a velociraptor. It chitters, drops a seed on your nose, then vanishes. Classic. You wipe your face against a log. Dignity gone. Your own skin is slick now, but warm. The rain feels less like danger today, and more like a massage from an invisible friend with very cold fingers. The giants you shelter beneath don't speak, but their movements, subtle shifts of stance, deep breaths, twitches of tail speak volumes. One of them leans slightly, creating a fresh overhang to shield a pair of newborns nestled in the moss. The calves blink up at the rain as if they were told it was a story. Their mother hums, or maybe growls softly, it's hard to tell. The sound vibrates your chest like a lullaby made of gravel. Here's an odd fact. Some paleontologists believe certain dinosaurs may have used infrasonic communication, low-frequency rumbles that could travel long distances through the ground. Which means that beneath all this surface noise, there might be a whole other conversation happening right now beneath your feet. The thought makes you pause. You lower your jaw to the ground just to listen, and you swear in the earth's hum you hear something like a welcome. The drizzle continues, soaking the land in slow silver threads. You shift slightly, tail curled around your feet like a sleepy cat. For the first time in what feels like 100 seasons, you're still. Not because you're hiding or afraid, but because you can be. Because someone larger decided to stand and be still for you. You sigh. Then, of course, a juvenile stegosaur, soaked and clumsy, stumbles backward and lands directly on your tail. You squeal, she squeals, and you both end up in a heap of legs and awkward apologies. The giants above don't react. This is just normal chaos. You untangle yourselves with quiet grunts and move back into place. Your bruised tail will recover. Your ego, however, will require at least one dramatic dust bath and a long sulk. As evening approaches, the clouds begin to lift. Not all the way, just enough for shafts of dying light to slice through the mist. They hit the droplets, clinging to the scales around you, and for a moment, just a moment, it looks like the herd is wearing armor made of fireflies. The matriarch stretches her neck, her silhouette glowing with gold. For a heartbeat, she looks eternal. A living statue. A god wrapped in thunder and moss. You're starting to understand something. The rain doesn't just test the herd, it binds it. The shared shelter, the instinct to protect and be protected, the communal warmth in a cold sky. These things aren't optional. They're the architecture of survival. And then, as if on cue, a juvenile somewhere lets out a truly heroic fart, and the entire moment collapses into laughter. Not real laughter, of course. just snorts and wheezes, and the unmistakable sound of a dry tail whapping a wet flank in retaliation. So much for sacred unity. You lie down in the wet grass smiling to yourself. If dinosaurs had bedtime stories, this would be one. The day the sky fell and nobody stood alone. You close your eyes. Rain still falls, but softer now. The shelter above you shifts slightly as the herd adjusts, finding positions for the long night ahead. You are warm, you are surrounded, and you are learning that sometimes the best place to be in a storm is under someone else's belly. You're not asleep, not exactly, just floating somewhere in that in-between place where dreams and reality bump elbows and pretend not to notice each other. The rain is still falling soft now, like it's apologizing for earlier. And then you start to hear it. Tap, tap, tap. It's not thunder, not distant branches falling. It's the sound of rain striking skin. Scales, to be exact. You open your eyes and lift your head slowly. Around you, the herd is settled, asleep, or dozing, their breathing sinking like a prehistoric lullaby. The rain taps against their hides, each drop making its own distinct note, muted on thick, leathery backs, sharper on horned frills, almost melodic, where water slides over armored plates. It's a concert, and you're inside it. You stand slowly, not wanting to disturb anyone. The matriarch shifts as you pass, but doesn't wake. You pad away, careful, quiet, the way you learned after getting sat on that one time by an ankylosaur who didn't believe in personal space. You reach the edge of the glade. Trees line the border, reaching up into darkness like they're still trying to catch the last of the storm. You step beneath the canopy, and there, sheltered from most of the dripping, you hear it again. Rain on scales. There's a pair of ceratopsians sleeping nearby, curled tail to snout. Rain kisses their frills and runs down the grooves in soft rivulets. One snorts in her sleep, legs twitching like she's chasing something in a dream. The sound of the droplets continues, hypnotic, rhythmic, a pattern you feel in your bones. Historians still debate whether dinosaurs could hear subtle tones like this, whether they experience the music of nature the way mammals do. You don't have the science to prove it, but you're hearing it now. The world's oldest metronome. You move through the grove like a ghost, weaving between trunks and shallow puddles. Each footstep a quiet ripple. You pass a sleeping hadrosaur, whose skin is studded with raised ridges. Each drop that lands on him rings like a drum roll. You half expect him to start humming along. And there, beyond the next cluster of cycads, you find something you weren't looking for. Feathers. Not yours, obviously. You're still very much in the scaly, lizardy, tail-swinging club. But this creature, small, sharp-eyed, tucked into the hollow of a tree, she's different. Her plumage is soaked and clumped, but even now you can see the flashes of color in her throat and wingtips. Blues, reds, a dash of violet like a bruise that learned to glow. She's awake, watching you, doesn't run, and the rain hits her like it was meant for feathers. Softer somehow, more delicate. Each drop vanishes into fluff instead of sliding off. You both stand there breathing while the night orchestra plays on. Then she does something you don't expect. She shakes. Water explodes from her body in all directions like a wet firework. You yelp and stumble back, soaked all over again. She chirps. If that's laughter, it's at your expense. You roll your eyes and retreat. Dignity. Who needs it? Here's an odd fact: there are modern birds that can sleep with half their brain while the other half stays alert. And you start to wonder, did these early feathered creatures do the same? Are you being watched by a half-asleep prehistoric prankster? Back beneath the trees, you find a fallen log and collapse against it, tail curled to your side. You close your eyes again. The sound continues. Tap, tap, tap. The storm outside the grove has softened to a drizzle. You can hear it rolling across the canopy in slow waves. Above that, the distant rumble of something far off. A reminder that the sky is never quite done with you. Your dreams come fast this time. You're floating again, but this time through clouds. Rain drips upward. The ground below you isn't ground, it's water stretching forever. Shapes move beneath the surface. Long necks, slow tails, silent teeth. The rain above merges with the ripples below until you can't tell which way is down anymore. You wake suddenly, not from fear, from quiet. The rain has stopped. The forest holds its breath. You listen nothing, not even a bird. Just the aftersound of water finding its way down the last few branches. The world is paused. Then a soft plop as a last raindrop lands squarely on your nose. You snort and shake your head, blinking at the dawn that's starting to slip between the trees. Golds and soft blues painting everything in the colors of first chances. The herd is waking. You stand, stretch, and yawn so wide it echoes. You survived another storm, but more than that, you heard it. You understood it. Rain is not just a punishment here. It's a message, a rhythm, a reminder that even giants listen to the tap of droplets on their backs. You smile to yourself. If the rain has a song, you know at least a few of the verses now. Dawn never really rises here. It seeps in slowly, like syrup pooling in the dips between trees and sliding across the mist-wrapped ground. You're already moving your limbs heavy but obedient, guided more by rhythm than thought. And you're not alone. The forest stirs with you. Raindrops still drip from every branch, every frond, every whiskered snout. You've barely stepped out from the grove when a bolt of white light flashes overhead, followed by a thunderclap that arrives so quickly it slaps your chest like a flat hand. You flinch. Everyone does. You'd hoped the storm had passed. You were wrong. This isn't the soft, contemplative drizzle of the night before. This is round two. The kind of storm that waits until you've unpacked your emotional baggage, then kicks the door back open with a smirk and says, "Miss me." Historians still debate whether tropical Cretaceous forests experienced violent thunderstorms like those we know today. But all evidence points to yes. Fossilized tree rings, sediment swirls, and the remnants of lightning-blasted trunks all suggest that ancient forests weren't peaceful havens, they were pressure cookers. And you're in the middle of one. The first drops are big, mean, like they're not falling, they're targeting. You dive for cover, ducking beneath the twisted arms of a low-slung fern canopy. But here's the problem with hiding in a prehistoric forest. Everything is alive and most of it is rude. The branch you choose already belongs to something. It hisses. You hiss back, a standoff between two creatures that are both wet, grumpy, and clearly not morning people. Eventually, it scurries off and you settle in with your dignity only mildly dented. The storm builds fast. Wind punches through the forest with the force of a charging ceratopsian. Leaves fly like paper. Trees sway like dancers who forgot the steps. And then, as if the sky itself has opinions, lightning strikes. A single jagged bolt slashes the heavens and punches straight into the heart of the forest. The light blinds you. The sound deafens you. You drop to the ground, instinctively, tail-curled legs tucked, breath frozen. When you lift your head again, the world is glowing. You're not hallucinating, probably. The tree that took the strike is still standing, but smoke is beginning to rise from its base, curling in strange shapes. The light makes every rain-washed surface gleam like polished stone. Even the mud seems to shimmer golden and trembling. You creep closer, drawn by a mix of fear and awe. The underbrush here is littered with leaves the size of your head, all knocked down by the wind. As you pass through, the scent hits you: burnt resin, wet bark, and something else. Something spicy and electric. If emotions had a smell, this would be anticipation. You peer through the smoke. Something is moving. A predator, maybe. But not charging, just watching. You make eye contact. It's a dromaeosaur, shorter than you, faster, wetter, and significantly less impressed by the lightning than you are. It blinks, snorts, then vanishes into the trees like it's late for an appointment. Classic forest behavior: always pretend you're not impressed even when you've just seen the gods toss a fire spear into your living room. Here's an odd fact: some lightning strikes in ancient times may have sparked spontaneous fires that changed entire ecosystems. That one crack of light might have reset a whole valley. Some creatures thrived in the aftermath. Others, not so much. You creep past the still steaming tree, careful not to touch it. The bark looks like it's been cracked open to reveal something older, something waiting. You don't linger. Ahead, the forest narrows into a ravine and the storm focuses itself like it's aiming. Water rushes in torrents along the path. You slip once, catch yourself, and continue climbing pressed close to the slope. And then everything goes dark. Not night dark. Storm dark. The canopy tightens above you, blotting out what little sky remains. You feel the pressure in your chest before you notice it in the air. The kind of silence that comes before something truly absurd happens. A pause in reality, and then it breaks. Rain, all at once. A downpour so dense it's like standing in the middle of a waterfall, except the waterfall is everywhere and also very rude. You hunch low, head down, trying to push forward. The water finds your eyes, your ears, your everything. It fills the world. You stumble into a clearing, a bowl of stone and moss open to the sky. Lightning flashes again, illuminating the walls of the ravine in blinding white. You see ancient carvings in the rock, natural patterns probably, but in this light they look like words, like warnings. You stay there for a moment, panting. You're not sure if you've escaped anything, but you're still upright, still breathing. And that counts. Eventually the rain begins to slow, just a little, enough for you to notice your reflection in a puddle. Your eyes look different now, older, not wiser necessarily, just like they've seen some things. And the thunder at last rolls away into the distance, muttering to itself like a sore loser. You climb out of the ravine slowly, muscles sore, skin steaming. At the top, you catch your breath. The forest beyond is waiting, wet, alive, and strangely beautiful. Because here's the thing about storms, they reveal what's underneath. Not just in the land, but in you. And you didn't run this time. You listened, you endured. You stood in the heart of the fern forest while the sky screamed and you're still here. You're thirsty, again, which feels unfair given how much rain just fell on your head. But the kind of thirst you feel now isn't about water dripping from leaves. It's the kind that needs a pool, a stream, something still enough to dip your snout into without worrying it'll bite back. So you walk. The storm has passed, but it left behind a chaos of sounds and smells. The forest is drenched. Leaves sag under their own weight. The path is a mosaic of footprints, some recent, some already being reclaimed by creeping mud. You follow a trail down into a low basin, ears twitching for signs of movement. And then you find it. A shallow, rain-fed pool tucked between a fallen log and a slope. It's perfect. Quiet, cool, ringed with reeds. You step forward, lower your neck, and pause. You're not alone. Across the water, maybe 15 meters away, stands another dinosaur. A theropod by the looks of it. Not one of the giants. Something lean, tall, still built like it's arguing with gravity but winning. Its mouth is closed, but those eyes wide open. Focused directly on you. Neither of you moves. The pool is barely big enough for one drinker at a time, and no one brought a number ticket. You glance left. It glances right. Then you both step forward. At the exact same time. You stop. So does it. There's a moment 2 seconds long maybe where the world decides to take a break. No birds call. No leaves rustle. The water surface reflects two faces and both of them look stubborn. You take a step. It growls. Low, not aggressive, more like, really, is this where we're doing this? You growl back, softly, just enough to say, try me. It steps forward, neck stiff, arms tucked, like it's considering a lunge. Your muscles coil, your nostrils flare. This puddle just became the center of the universe. Historians still debate whether dinosaurs engaged in dominance displays over water sources or if most such encounters were resolved with avoidance. But here's a reality you can feel in your feet when it hasn't rained in days, and everything smells like wet leaves and old fear a puddle becomes a battlefield. You're about to back away just slightly, just enough to maybe diffuse the tension when something splashes between you. A smaller dinosaur, feathered, probably a juvenile, just leaps into the pool like it's a playground. It flops down belly first, sending muddy water flying in every direction. The moment breaks like a dropped plate. You and the theropod blink stunned. The kid blinks back at you both with the gleeful cluelessness only the young can manage, then splashes around like it owns the place. Two more juveniles appear at the edge of the trees, chirping encouragement. The theropod shakes its head slowly, tail flicking with exasperation. Then, without a word, because words don't exist yet, but the vibe is loud, it turns and walks off. Not exactly defeated, just done. You wait another moment, then slowly step forward. The juveniles scatter laughing, or whatever that chirping means. You finally lower your head and drink. The water is warm from sunlight tinged with leaf debris and a few flecks of soggy feather. Honestly, it tastes like victory. Here's an odd fact: there's a modern bird in the Andes that will fake an injury to lure predators away from its nest. Meaning even today, some creatures win battles not with strength but with distraction. You make a mental note to thank that kid if you ever see him again. The pool reflects the forest above, and in it your face looks calmer now. Less defensive, more grounded. You slurp one final mouthful and step back, letting the ground squish underfoot like a wet sponge. You turn uphill, heading back toward the herd. As you crest the ridge, you glance behind. The puddle's still there, the young one's still playing. One of them slips and lands snout first with a squawk that makes a passing bird nearly fall out of a tree. You smirk. The forest stretches ahead in familiar shapes now. No storms, no predators in sight. Just the gentle aftermath of tension, the part where the story exhales. But in the back of your mind, you remember the eyes across the water. The way neither of you wanted to back down. The way nature didn't intervene, it just waited to see who'd move first. There's no trophy for surviving these standoffs, just another patch of earth where you don't have to run. For now, you take a breath. You keep walking, and somewhere behind you, water keeps rippling. Rain returns again, but this time it doesn't sneak in. It sachets. Not a downpour, not a threat, just a gentle, persistent drizzle, light enough to tickle the skin, heavy enough to make you blink. You pause at the tree line, listening to how it taps out a rhythm on the wide fronds and hollows above. You weren't expecting to see anything interesting today. But then again, you weren't expecting a mating ritual either. It starts subtly, a bright blur ahead. Movement, but not like the usual kind. It's not hungry, it's not running, it's performing. You crouch behind a cluster of cycads and peek out. Across the clearing, a dinosaur the size of a horse is strutting. That's the only word for it. Strutting. Its feathers, yes, feathers are slicked back, puffed up and glistening with moisture. Bright orange fans shimmer along its arms and tail, trembling ever so slightly each time it pivots. It chirps, warbles, spins. You blink mesmerized. You're not even the intended audience. Historians still debate whether complex visual mating displays were common among non-avian dinosaurs, but some fossilized feathers show pigmentation patterns that scream, "Look at me, I'm irresistible." And this guy, he's not just screaming, he's composing an entire musical. You spot the object of his affection a few meters away, perched on a log, watching with a mixture of curiosity and extreme judgment. She's slightly larger, more muted in color, and entirely still, as if she's evaluating every wing flick and tail twitch with the seriousness of an ancient art critic. He does a low stomp. She flinches. He freezes. Then suddenly he vibrates, his chest puffing, his arms twitching in rapid, fluttery movements that send a mist of water droplets outward in perfect spirals. You involuntarily say, "Whoa," just a little too loud. The female looks towards you, the male freezes. You duck fast, smooth. When you peek again, they're still at it. The female has now stepped down from the log and is circling him slowly like she's reading the back of a cereal box she's not sure she wants to buy. The rain picks up slightly and something magical happens. His feathers catch the light in a way that turns them iridescent. The orange becomes flame, the blues become midnight oil, and the rain turns to glitter in the air around him. You've never seen anything like it. He dips low, one knee, head tucked, wings raised, and waits. She circles again. Then at the very edge of your vision, she flicks her tail. Barely. That's it. That's the signal. He springs up with such force that mud splatters in every direction, then nuzzles her gently wings, wrapping partway around her like a feathered hug. She doesn't move, just closes her eyes. You back away quietly, giving them space. You've seen enough soap operas to know when to exit a scene. Here's an odd fact: some modern birds only perform their mating dances when it rains. Scientists suspect the weather affects visibility, smell, even mood. Maybe water just makes everything feel more alive and more urgent. As you walk, you catch glimpses of others, small rituals hidden in the wetness. Two stegosaurs rubbing sides in synchronized rhythm. A pair of ornithomimids kicking up muddy spirals, together their long legs slicing the puddles like dancers on a prehistoric stage. All of it timed to the metronome of soft rainfall. This isn't just survival, it's celebration. Rain doesn't only feed the forest, it awakens it. You pause beside a shallow stream, watching a cluster of small-scaled creatures chirp and whistle at each other while hopping from rock to rock. None of them are larger than your head, but their movements are exact, like they're practicing. Rehearsing for the day they'll need to impress someone or escape something. You wonder briefly what your kind's version of courtship looks like. You've never paid attention before. But now you're thinking maybe there's more to this walking and eating and surviving business than just not dying. Maybe there's meaning in display, in beauty, in doing something because it doesn't help. Rain begins to taper off. The trees drip slower now, like they're catching their breath. The world settles. And somewhere back behind you, a dinosaur with a very wet head and the flashiest feathers you've ever seen is probably still humming to himself. Love, it turns out, doesn't wait for dry weather. The drizzle doesn't stop. It just fades until you can't quite tell if it's still falling or if the trees are just sighing. You're full from a morning graze and your legs ache with that deep, useful soreness that only comes from walking farther than your instincts recommend. You'd rest, but something isn't right. There's water everywhere. Still pools, flooded creeks, soaked moss that squishes like bread underfoot. And your eyes keep stinging not from the rain, but from the air. You're standing near the lowlands now, where the storm's aftermath has brewed a swampy mess of humidity, rot, and something less familiar. The kind of air that smells like it has too many opinions and none of them are friendly. You squint across the flats and realize nothing is moving. Not the birds, not the bugs, not even the wind. The silence isn't peaceful, it's wrong. And then, you hear it, a low drone rising from the reeds like a choir of hungover wasps. You swat at your flank without thinking. Then again, and then they land on your face. You panic a little. Tiny wings, biting mouths, endless buzzing. Rain-fed mosquitoes the size of thumbprints, and they've declared open season. You run. You're not alone. All around you, dinosaurs are swatting tails, stomping feet, shaking heads. The swamp saturated and still is alive with things that should not be this bold. A juvenile hadrosaur charges blindly through the brush, chased by a cloud of insects that looks like a smoke plume with anger issues. You burst into a clearing and try to find wind shade, anything. Instead, you find a nest. Not yours. Not even your species, but unmistakable. Cracked shells lie in scattered fragments, some still clinging to bits of membrane. No bodies, just the echo of something that didn't get a second chance. You freeze. The buzzing fades for a second. Not in the world, just in your head. This place is wrong. Rain was supposed to bring renewal. But too much of it, too long, too deep, turns everything soft, vulnerable. Disease follows. Decay spreads. Life grows, yes, but so does death. Historians still debate how much rain was too much in the Mesozoic, whether certain extinction events were worsened by stagnant floods and breeding grounds for parasites. But here and now, you don't need a theory. You're living in a soggy warning. You trudge out of the clearing and follow a ridge rising just enough to find drier ground. The herd has splintered slightly. Some individuals seeking higher ground, others dipping low in search of food. But the tension is rising thick as the mist. And then one of them falls. A young stegosaur not much older than you just drops, legs out, head low, breathing hard. You approach cautiously. She's not moving. Her flanks twitch with every breath, eyes fluttering like a candle in wind. And the insects, oh no, they're swarming her. You rear up and stomp tail, whipping in wide arcs to scatter the cloud. A few others join you, forming a loose circle. One nudges her gently. No response. She's breathing, barely, but she's not here. You don't know what happened. Fever, maybe. Blood loss? Exhaustion? Something carried in the floodwaters or hatched in the marsh. Something that took root in the wet places of her lungs and decided not to leave. There's nothing you can do. One of the older members lets out a low, mournful moan, a sound that vibrates your ribcage. You've never heard it before, but you know what it means. Leave her. Keep moving. The herd starts to shift again, heading uphill. You turn back once, just once, to look at the still form behind you. The rain starts again, not much, just enough to make her silhouette blur into the mud. You climb. Here's an odd fact: some fossil beds show evidence of mass deaths in swamp zones. Entire herds caught in floods or overwhelmed by sudden disease. The record doesn't always show teeth and claws. Sometimes extinction is slow, damp, and quiet. You reach the ridge and breathe. The wind is cooler here. The mosquitoes thin out. You find a patch of dry moss beneath a tilted tree and collapse onto it, legs sprawled, chest heaving. Rain drips from your back in steady rivulets. You're soaked. You're sore. You're more tired than you've ever been, but you're still breathing. And that matters, because some rain brings life, some rain brings decay, and some rain simply waits, watching to see who's left when the puddles dry. The air smells different today. Not clean, not foul, just charged, like it's been holding its breath too long and is about to do something reckless. The sky above is a strange patchwork of white and bruised purple, and you know, before the wind even shifts, the drought is over. Real rain is coming. You're up early, grazing along the ridge with a few others, ears flicking lazily at persistent flies. The ground below, once cracked and pale, is now a shimmering field of new growth. Just days ago, this basin was dead-parched, dust-choked, silent. Now it pulses. Green shoots elbow through the soil like they've been waiting in line for millennia. It looks like hope. It smells like dinner. You descend with the others, joining a tide of herbivores, all doing the same thing, seizing the moment. There's a rhythm to your movements, unspoken but shared. Everyone is eating, but everyone is watching. Because when the rain returns after drought, it doesn't bring peace. It brings competition. You pass a group of hadrosaurs chest deep in reeds, tearing off mouthfuls of aquatic greens. Their snorts and slurps sound like someone gargling soup next to a microphone. They glance your way, protective, but not hostile, yet. Ahead, a towering ceratopsian lowers its head and stomps a young ankylosaur out of the way with a shoulder shove that says, "Move." No roars, no bites, just raw size and bad manners. You stick close to your own group, pressing in tighter than usual. Everyone's jittery. Every glance lingers. Every rustle makes tails twitch. The land is rich now, but not rich enough for everyone. Historians still debate how resource availability shaped dinosaur behavior post-drought. Some theories suggest temporary truces, while others point to increased aggression. All you know is that food brings bodies, and bodies bring friction. The first fight is quick. Two juvenile hadrosaurs screaming at each other over a bush. One lunges, the other retreats, but not before biting a chunk out of the first one's tail. It's not serious, just a message, but it echoes. You don't want to linger. You move toward the far edge of the basin where the vegetation is less dense but still fresh. Fewer dinosaurs here. Less noise. You settle in and start feeding, keeping one eye on the ridgeline. The clouds are thickening. The wind has a wet edge now. It's coming. You're halfway through a particularly satisfying cluster of ferns when something shifts beside you. You freeze. A pair of long shadows passes behind the trees. Raptors, larger ones. You don't move. They don't charge. They're not here to hunt yet. They're here to watch, to wait. The rain has made the world slippery and slippery things make easy prey. You move uphill again carefully. As you reach higher ground, you spot the matriarch. She's already positioned herself between the young ones and the dense brush where predators might lurk. She doesn't roar, she just stands. Breathing, present. She sees you. You fall into place beside her without question. And that's when the rain comes. Fast, hard, loud. Not a drizzle, not a gentle patter. This is the kind of rain that stings. It slaps your back, slides down your sides, runs into your eyes and mouth and everywhere else. The herd bunches up immediately, forming a loose spiral. You're pressed between shoulders, tails, knees. The warmth helps even if the mud beneath you doesn't. The ground transforms in seconds. Low areas flood. Slopes become rivers. The green basin becomes a brown, bubbling mess. And suddenly, out of the corner of your eye, you see something that doesn't belong. Movement. Fast. Desperate. It's a young ceratopsian sprinting toward your cluster, chased by a pair of raptors, now emboldened by chaos. The herd shifts, but not quickly enough. One raptor lunges and slips. The other circles wide, trying to cut her off. The matriarch roars. It's not a sound of fear. It's wrath. She surges forward with a power that splits the herd like water. Her tail lashes out, catching the lead raptor and sending it flying into a tree trunk with a satisfying crack. The second predator veers off immediately. Everyone watches. No one cheers, but no one needs to. You regroup. The rain slows, then stops. Steam rises from the hot, wet earth. The matriarch returns to her post like nothing happened. Here's an odd fact. Some dinosaurs had chemical defenses not unlike modern reptiles, but others just had presence. Enough mass, enough fury, enough stillness. That was their shield. You stay close to her now, not out of fear, but respect. The drought is broken. The land is wet. Life has returned. But rain-like power is never fair. It doesn't choose sides. It just falls. The climb takes most of the afternoon. You're not running. No one is. The herd has settled into a steady, patient pace, high steps slow, breathing necks low and swaying with the rhythm of each careful stride. The path is narrow, carved by centuries of ancient feet, winding upward through stone and vine, and memories older than language. You're climbing for perspective, literally. The rain hasn't returned yet, but the clouds are gathering again, and the matriarch has chosen high ground. Not just for safety, but to see, to know. You follow the curve of the ridge until the trees thin and the canopy parts to reveal a lookout that feels almost sacred. Flat stone juts out above the valley like a diving board into deep time. Moss coats its surface in lazy green patches, slick and glowing faintly in the fading light. And then you see it, the storm, a rolling leviathan of black and bruised purple, slinking across the lowlands with the confidence of a predator that knows no one can stop it. Lightning flickers inside its belly like hunger. The wind ahead of it sends trees bowing in waves, a forest caught mid-apology. You're not alone. The entire ridge is lined with dinosaurs, silent, still, watching. It's not fear, not even awe. It's acknowledgement. You step forward, joining them. From up here, the world looks like a painting in motion, green, gold, and gray, each brushstroke more dramatic than the last. You see herds moving far below, tiny as toys. You see rivers twisting through the landscape, their banks already swollen from earlier storms. You see the edge of something old, slow, and inevitable. Historians still debate how much of this awareness dinosaurs possessed, whether they could predict storms by instinct, by scent, by sound. But standing here with your heart beating in sync with the wind, you're not debating anything. You feel it, and that's enough. The matriarch lets out a low rumble. Not a warning, a welcome. The herd begins to shift, not retreating, reorganizing. You follow suit, taking position along a stone ledge where the footing is better and the drop-off less severe. Around you, feathers puff up, tails tighten, eyes narrow. The first gust hits a moment later. It whips through the ridge with the sting of dry sand and cold water slamming against your side like a memory. You crouch, instinctively, muscles tensing. But the storm isn't on you yet, just brushing its fingers through your skin to let you know soon. The temperature drops. Birds that had roosted in the higher branches scatter into the wind, shrieking their frustration. One nearly collides with a small pachycephalosaur who reacts by headbutting a bush. You decide not to read into that. The matriarch remains still, her silhouette framed by sky rain and the growing dark. You glance at her, and for a moment you swear she looks timeless. You huddle near a boulder, seeking shelter from the side sweep of wind. The rocks are cool, the moss soft. The others press in near you, shoulders closed, tails tucked. A juvenile stegosaur leans too far and nearly topples off the ledge, earning a sharp grunt from an older sibling. You close your eyes, briefly listening. Here's the thing about storms: they always announce themselves, not in shouts, in whispers. The creak of tree trunks, the rustle of fronds, the subtle shift in pressure that makes your ears pop and your thoughts go still. That's when the first drop hits. A single cold tap against your brow. Then another, and another. Then 1,000. Then 10,000. The sky opens wide, and everything vanishes in the sound. Rain hammers the ridge with a fury that rattles stone. The herd doesn't scatter. It settles. Low to the ground, legs tucked, heads close, breathing together as one. You crouch with them, water rushing down your back, plastering your skin in a cold embrace. Every inch of you is soaked in seconds. But you do not move. You watch, because something is happening in the valley below. Lightning arcs across the field like claws raking the sky. The storm strikes a low hill and splits its soil brush, roots blown into the air in a geyser of light and heat. Trees fall in domino lines. Birds scream through the air like broken kites. The whole basin shudders, and you do not look away. You can't, because you understand something now. Storms are not just weather, not just obstacles. They are reminders that you live in a world older than sense, deeper than time, and more powerful than anything you can predict or control. Here's an odd fact: lightning has been striking this planet for over 4 billion years. Before bones, before rainforests, before memory. It has always fallen, and it always will. The matriarch raises her head again, not to challenge the storm, but to greet it. You breathe in deeply, the wind whipping your lungs clean. And you stay there, on the cliff, in the storm, watching, because this is what it means to survive. To see the gods walk through the valley and choose not to run. You descend the ridge at dawn, if you can call it that. The sky is a muddled bruise of gray and violet, and the sun, wherever it's hiding, has clearly opted to sleep in. You don't blame it. The storm passed hours ago, but its weight lingers. Every branch, every stone, every breath still feels soaked with yesterday's thunder. The herd moves cautiously, hooves and claws picking through mud and broken limbs. There's no urgency, just that quiet collective understanding that things have changed. You follow the edge of a stream bed that didn't exist 2 days ago. Now it snakes through the trees like a scar, shallow and fast, filled with silt and twigs. The ground here has shifted, not violently, but deliberately. As if the rain rearranged the furniture while no one was looking. And that's when you see them. Bones, half exposed in the side of a hill that wasn't a hill before. The rain peeled back the topsoil like skin-off fruit, revealing something older, something buried. You approach slowly. They're not fresh, not yours, not anyone's that you know, but they're shaped in familiar ways, ribs like bent fence posts, vertebrae aligned in a lazy curve. A femur snapped clean at the middle protrudes from the slope like a handle from the earth itself. You crouch. The mud around it is soft, easy to dig. You nudge at the edges with your snout, dislodging clumps, revealing more of the skeleton bit by bit. It's small. Juvenile, maybe. A long-tailed, delicate limbs, teeth still sharp despite time's bite. You're not a scientist, But even you can feel what this is. A memory, trapped in the earth, preserved by chance, by water, by time. Historians still debate how many dinosaur fossils were formed by sudden floods, deaths by drowning or burial in landslides, or entombment under rain-soaked debris. But standing here beside bones still slick with yesterday's rain, the debate feels unnecessary. You know, this one didn't die from hunger or claws. This one died from sky. You glance around, the forest is quiet. Birds are still hiding. Insects are slow to return. Even the wind seems hesitant. You lie beside the skeleton, not close enough to disturb it, but near enough to feel its echo. For a moment, you match your breathing to the shape of its ribs, imagining lungs that once filled and emptied beneath storms just like yours. You wonder what its last moment was like. Did it see the water coming? Did it run? Did it cry out? Was anyone there to hear it? And then you realize you are here. Too late, yes, but here. Here's an odd fact: fossils aren't bones. They're stone. The minerals that replace them over time erase the original matter, leaving only shape. Ghosts of shape. What you see now is not what was, but what remains. You rise slowly, not out of fear, out of respect. You step away and continue downstream. The rain has transformed this path into a corridor of memory puddles, filled with floating petals, twisted roots exposed like ancient veins. You pass fallen trees and flattened nests. A broken eggshell the size of your face lies half buried in silt, its inside hollow and shining. Nothing here is whole, but everything is true. You catch up with the herd at the basin's edge. They've paused again, drawn to something. More bones. This time, a cluster. Half a dozen skeletons tangled together like driftwood. Adults, juveniles. A herd like yours. Caught together in a collapse of mud and rain and panic, preserved in the shape of flight. One of the young ones beside you makes a soft sound. Not sorrow, not fear, just wondering. You stay a while. No one rushes. There's something sacred in the way the herd lingers, silent, reverent, not touching but knowing. You all understand something without needing to say it. This is not just death. It's history, written not in words, but in water and bone. The matriarch is the last to turn away. She leads you onwards, slow, steady. Her tail drags through the mud, leaving a new trail behind. As you walk, you look back once more at the exposed skeletons, half in the earth, half in the air. They won't last long like this. The rain that revealed them will eventually reclaim them. Roots will return. Leaves will fall. The story will be covered again. But you saw them, and you'll carry them with you. Because sometimes the most important thing you can do for the past is remember. The world after a storm smells like second chances. Everything is rinsed. Colors, brighter air, cleaner, the dirt between your toes softer and more forgiving, but there's something else now. A hum beneath the ground. A vibration in the trees, not from thunder, not from fear, from life. You walk through a patch of young growth where the plants haven't yet decided how tall they want to be. The ferns brush your belly as you move, soft and tentative, like they're still deciding if it's safe to exist. And then movement. Small, quick. You freeze. A blur of fur and scales darts between rocks. Another follows. Then a third. A whole parade of creatures no bigger than your head is bouncing through the wet leaves, squeaking to each other with the energy of a school field trip on sugar. You tilt your head. This is new. They're not the sleek, silent predators you've learned to avoid. They're not herbivores either, at least not exclusively. These are opportunists, the kind of animals that wait for chaos, then party in its aftermath. And they've come out in the rain. Gliders swoop from the trees. Tiny dinosaurs with membranes stretch between limbs, catching drips mid-air as they flash by. One nearly collides with your face and lets out a shriek that sounds more insulted than afraid. You watch as a pair of them wrestle over a dead beetle, tumbling into a puddle like wrestlers in a kiddie pool. A third one joins in just because. It doesn't even want the beetle. It just loves drama. Historians still debate how many species of small dinosaurs and proto-mammals were active specifically during rainfall, taking advantage of larger creatures' sheltering behavior. But watching this scene unfold, you'd bet your tail on it. These little freaks thrive on drizzle. And it's not just them. A digger low-bodied built like a roly-poly with a bad attitude scrambles out from beneath a root cluster. Its snout is caked in mud. It glances at you, huffs and scurries right back into its tunnel tail, twitching in judgment. You feel slightly insulted. Nearby, a cluster of frogs croak a song so synchronized, it sounds like a prehistoric EDM beat. One of them puffs out a neck sack the size of a melon and lets out a croak so deep you feel it in your ribcage. Even the insects are putting on a show. Beetles with iridescent shells clamber onto wet stones and flare their wings like they're waiting for someone to take their portrait. A mantis-like thing hangs upside down from a branch, rocking gently as it grooms one leg with surgical precision. Here's an odd fact. The earliest known gliding vertebrate existed over 240 million years ago. It didn't survive long, but others did. You're watching their descendants now and they're making the most of every damp second. And then you see them. Tiny bipedal creatures no bigger than modern chickens engaged in what can only be described as a rain dance. They hop, spin, leap, then freeze. Hop, spin, leap, freeze. The pattern repeats. It's not hunting, it's not mating, it's not fleeing, it's joy. You stand still for a long time just watching. This is their moment. Yours comes in the thunder, the stampede, the push against predators and storms. But they shine in the puddles. You shift slightly, letting the smallest glider use your tail as a springboard. It chirps as it launches, gliding into the bushes like a paper plane, tossed by a child who doesn't care where it lands. You smirk. Not every survivor needs to be big. Not every warrior needs teeth. Sometimes survival is knowing how to move with the storm, how to dance in it, feed in it. Raise your tiny hands to the sky and say, "Yes, soak me. I dare you." You begin walking again, stepping carefully around the wet stone theater of tiny miracles. The matriarch is waiting ahead, her massive form half silhouetted against a rising mist. The herd is moving again, always moving. As you catch up, you glance behind one last time. The gliders are still flipping through the air like leaves. The diggers are tunneling under wet logs. The frogs are still harmonizing with the enthusiasm of bad karaoke. And in the center of it all, the smallest, weirdest creatures of the Mesozoic are showing the world how to be brilliant when it rains. You nod a quiet acknowledgement. Even gods had to start somewhere. Rain again, of course. It begins just before twilight, slipping out of a soft gray sky and quiet curtains. No thunder, no drama, just the final fall of water like the earth sighing through its teeth. You don't flinch this time, you barely even blink. Because now you understand it. You stand at the edge of a wide clearing. The herd behind you, silent, peaceful. Their movements gentle in the fading light. The matriarch rests her breathing deep, steady. She's been slower these days. You've noticed, you all have. But no one speaks of it. Ahead beyond the trees, the lowlands stretch out like a canvas still being painted. Pools shimmer in the rain, rimmed by moss and fern. You step forward and feel the softness of the earth beneath your feet, the give of soaked soil. It no longer feels like an obstacle. It feels like belonging. Historians still debate whether dinosaurs experienced time the way we do. If they had memory nostalgia, the sense of days passing and lives accumulating. But in this moment, standing in the rain, surrounded by others who have seen what you've seen, survived what you've survived, you're certain of it. Because this feels like an ending. The sky darkens, but the forest glows, wet leaves catching the last light, turning gold and green and silver all at once. You lower your head to drink from a shallow pool, your reflection rippling gently with each drop. You don't look tired. You look ready. There's movement in the trees, not predators, not danger, just life. A mother leads her young through the brush, tiny feet stumbling in the wet grass. A glider drifts silently overhead. Somewhere in the distance, frogs begin their chorus once more, a low rhythmic thrum that spreads like a lullaby across the valley. And then the matriarch rises, slowly, deliberately. She steps forward not to lead but to stand. Her shadow stretches across the earth and you move beside her without hesitation. Others follow, not because they must, but because they choose to. The rain deepens, the wind rises. You raise your head to the sky and let it wash over you, over scars and scales, over old pain and new strength. You don't play brace against it this time. You welcome it. Because rain has always come. It will always come. It fell on the backs of creatures long before you were born. It will fall again after you're gone. It is not your enemy. It is not your trial. It is your inheritance. Here's an odd fact in some places. Fossilized raindrop impressions still sit in stone circles of ancient water, caught in mid-splash preserved for millions of years. They are proof that even the most fleeting things can leave a mark. You smile, because tonight you've left yours too. You close your eyes. The storm falls quiet. The herd is still. The world goes soft. And for the first time, you don't worry about what comes next. Because whatever it is, sunlight or thunder, drought or flood, you will meet it on your feet with your head high and your memory full of rain. In the hush between thunder and memory, you wandered through the wet world of dinosaurs, not as a predator or prey, but as a witness. You felt the first fat drops of a storm that carved the shape of history into the earth. You learned how rain leaves footprints, uncovers bones, invites chaos, and teaches rhythm. You drank from contested puddles, danced under the watch of strangers, and huddled beneath the flanks of giants who stood still so you could learn. Each storm was different. Some came to test you. Others came to wash away what couldn't stay. But always, always they reminded you this land is older than you, deeper than you, and still willing to carry you forward if you move with care. You saw life bloom in the drizzle and death come in the flood. You heard frogs sing in harmony with gliders tumbling above. You watched feathered dancers perform in the mist, and you stood on a ridge while lightning tore the sky open like a promise. And in the end, you found yourself beneath the last rain, one more fall soft and slow, where the past echoed through stone and bone, and the future waited in the hush that followed. You didn't fear it. You stood in it. And for a moment, all was still.